That's the combination you've been to, to be honest. Two of us. Oh yeah.
Good afternoon and welcome to
Paul Everard, Planning, Policy and Heritage Manager, West Northamptonshire.
Chris Ragg, Transportation Development Manager at the Council.
Richard Ward, Interim Head of Planning and Climate Change Policy at the Council.
Jimmy Neighbour, Planning Officer for West Northamptonshire Council.
James Williams, Principal Transport Planner at Stantec, working on behalf of Coventry and Lakeland Homes.
Andrew Winterskill, David Lock Associates, and also here on behalf of Coventry LLP Lakeland Homes, specifically in respect of sites 1144 west of the Northampton South SUE. Thank you for that. I was going to ask that. I also realise I omitted to introduce ourselves. My name is Mark Sturgis, and my colleague Philip Lewis. We are the inspectors appointed by the Secretary of State to carry out this examination. In terms of housekeeping, the Council said this morning that there's not likely to be a fire alarm, so if the fire alarm does go, it's for real, and we go out via the Spencer Percival exit.
Yes.
And we meet opposite or outside a building which was a former Ask Pizza place.
Correct, yeah.
Toilets are on the ground floor. In terms of COVID precautions, if you can wear your masks when you're moving around the building, but you're fine without them when you're sitting down. And we are trying to keep the windows open to keep the room ventilated as per advice. I'm not sure there's much else to say by way of introduction. Mr. Lewis, have you got anything to...
Just to remind people to try to speak up because of the live streaming, given we've got a little bit of street noise going on outside, traffic or whatever, so no, that's all, thank you.
Thank you very much. In that case, we'll move on to the first site that's we need to look at this afternoon, and that's Fraser Road, LA 0657. Before I start on this one, we are aware that there is a current planning application.
There is a current planning application.
What we are not going to do is to comment at all on the merits of that planning application. The planning application is entirely a matter for the council. We will be just looking at the issues that have been raised through the local plan and those soundness issues that I referred to this morning. So, in terms of Fraser Road, we've got a number of issues, and the first one is biodiversity and the proximity of the local wildlife site. I hope the Council could give us some more information on that by way of a start.
Okay, thank you very much. The proposed allocation is effective because any proposals that come forward on the site will need to comply with policy 29 of the local plan, which relates to supporting and enhancing biodiversity. You will note that policy 29 is being proposed for modification, which is modification 14, and this will strengthen the policy as it will split it in two, and it will focus on biodiversity as well as nature conservation separately. In addition, any proposals will need to comply with policy BN2 of the Joint Core Strategy, which relates to biodiversity.
There have been some issues raised around heritage assets that might be in the area. Firstly, are there any implications to this site for heritage assets? This site for heritage assets?
From our site assessments, we did not identify any heritage assets that would not be capable of any mitigation.
And are there any other factors that you come across that might make the site not deliverable or developable in terms of the definitions in the framework?
No, we have not identified any factors.
Mr. Lewis, thank you. We'll move on then to LA 1009. That's the land west of policy N5, Northampton South SUE, and that's 3 sites which are combined, I think, now under 1144.
Yeah.
So the first thing is, does the combination of those 3 sites make the policy more effective?
We consider that in combining the 3 sites, it will make the policy more effective. In order to understand why, it is useful to make note of the land ownership situation. It is understood that 2 of the sites are controlled by one owner, and they are working in partnership with the owner of the 3rd site. I'm sure Mr. Winterskill will confirm that. So in allocating the sites separately, it would imply that the issues associated with delivery would be quite straightforward when it isn't the case. Combining the 3 sites would simplify the allocation. It will make it clearer, more effective.
Thank you. Can I come to Mr. Winston on this?
Thank you, sir. Yes, I can wholeheartedly endorse what Ms. Banks said there. 2 of the sites, so 1009 and 1142, are under the same control, jointly controlled by Fishery Homes and Clarion Housing Group, who have a joint venture under the name of Coventry LLP. So that's sites 1009 and 1142. Site 0168, which is the southerly site, joining M1, is under the control of Lagan Homes, but critically Lagan and Coventry LLP are working together to deliver the whole. So, as Ms. Banks like said, the plan is rendered effective by combining the 3 sites into a single allocation, so 1144 as per the first plan.
Thank you. In terms of question 94, the site is obviously almost surrounded on the sort of southern and northern and eastern side by the SUE. I'll address this to Council first. What's the implication for the delivery of the site? Bearing in mind it appears from the information that we have that the access would be through the SUE.
Well, the owners of sites 1009 and 1142, I believe, is currently delivering the scheme in Northampton South SUE. So the first phase of the SUE is now under construction. So the development of the 3 sites has the scope to be almost like a logical and sustainable extension of the existing SUE.
So in terms of the sequence of events,
Yeah.
the SUE will be built, has it got to be built out completely before these can start, or is it just about establishing the access through the SUE?
Can I refer you to?
Yes, absolutely. I'm happy to help on this one, sir. So if I can take you to Appendix 2 to our statement, our key statement. This is just to hold this up for you, this is the phasing plan, this is the approved phasing plan for the SUE. Effectively the SUE has outlined permission for up to 1,000 homes in the primary school and the local centre. Of those 1,000 homes, the first 349 have been approved by way of a reserve matters approval. So that's phase 1, which benefits from reserve matters approval. That's now under construction.
back onto the site. Phases 2 and 3 of that master plan benefit from outline permission, but not yet reserved approval.
So that's the purpley colour.
Yes, the purple is used to the turquoise is phase 3 of So, combined site 11 from 4 is effectively phase 4 of the SUV, but critically it wouldn't require phase 2 and 3 to be complete before it started. Because if I can take you to Appendix 1 to our statement, which is the approved master plan for the SUV, I'll just remind you what that is. That's that plan there, sir.
Yes, I've got it.
So that's the approved master plan. You can see the access from Rotary Road to the north.
Yes.
You can also see two secondary accesses coming off that primary access route, coming off that route to the west. Those two secondary accesses point towards site 1144 effectively.
Is that the blue line?
Yes, that's right, the two blue lines. So there's a loop road there.
Yeah.
So those are effectively approved secondary routes within the master plan, within the approved master plan. So that loop will be extended into site 1144, and at the risk of jumping too much around plans, I would take you to Appendix 3, the Appendix 3 plan, which is the conceptual master plan for 44, effectively this one for the
Yes, I can
plan
put it,
there.
yeah.
You can see how it's proposed to access 1144, so effectively through an extension of that loop into 1144, which would enable 1144 to be built. But very importantly, 1144 doesn't have to await the full completion of the SUV. So as long as the Rotary Road access is in, and as long as the secondary loop is in, then it can be started. So effectively it will come forwards towards the end of the delivery of the SUV, but not at the very end.
So in terms of years, what year are we looking at perhaps?
Well, we're looking at 2027 as the assumed start date for 44. And that's based on the trajectory for the SUV, which involves, as I said, currently in construction of the first phase. So completion started earlier this year, likely to complete by 2029. So towards the end of that 8-year build period for the SUV, expect 44 to start completing.
Thank you for that, that's very useful. In terms of these sites, one is actually quite close to the M1 motorway, abuts it to one. Are there any implications for the noise and in particular poor air quality for the potential residents of these sites, which might affect either the delivery of the site or the capacity of the site if dwellings, for instance, have to be moved further away from the motorway?
Let me just we don't think that there would be issues associated with air pollution, air quality that cannot be addressed through a master planning exercise, through design and through layout, because with regards to an appeal decision to the Northampton South SUV, the Secretary of State at that point.
So that's shown on all those three plans, specifically on the Appendix 1 plan. The setback from the motorway to the edge of the SUV on that plan was specifically sized for air quality reasons, as well as for noise reasons. So air quality modelling that was undertaken to support the outline plan application for the SUV, that determined that beyond about 40 to 50 metres from the edge of the motorway, there wouldn't be any adverse air quality effects on the road. So it's actually a very narrow corridor plan which is potentially affected by air quality issues, by pollution from the road. So the buffer that was within the approved master plan for the
allows for air quality protection. It also allows for noise protection. Again, that's based on detailed noise modelling that was undertaken for the outline application that was permitted in the Skip Boot Master Plan. Looking at site 1144, we have indicated on the concept master plan for that, so on the street plan, we have indicated a slightly closer approach to the motorway. The reason for that is that in this particular location, the M1 is in cutting. So further southeast, the M1 is actually pretty much at grade for a fair chunk of that section adjacent to the M3. But as you go further west, as you go further northwest, you get into a cutting, which will further reduce any noise effects from the M1 as well as further limit any air quality effects as well. So the buffer that we've shown on this concept plan, it is indicative, it is conceptual rather than definitive at this stage. It requires clearly further work at planning application stage. But a slightly closer approach to the motorway becomes implication. There has been some initial noise modelling undertaken, which we refer to in the key statements, paragraph 24 of that. That work has concluded that depending upon the range of detailed design solutions, so depending on whether, for instance, there's a high bund, a slightly lower bund, a fence on the top of the bund, depending on whether it's barrier block design, high buildings close to the motorway or not, depending on any gaps between those buildings closest to the motorway, depending on a whole range of factors, noise will be reduced and mitigated sufficiently to completely acceptable levels. So the edge of those development areas shown on the concept master plan is a kind of midpoint estimate of what it might end up with at the application stage once that building is
Yeah, in terms of what's ever been, just looking at that concept master plan that I had in front of me, it does look like the distance between the edge of the carriageway and the boundary of the site is greater as well because of the it's showing that sort of treed buffer.
Yes.
Is that a correct representation?
Yes, it is, absolutely. So there's a thicker vegetated boundary there along past the site. These instances, as I say, although we have shown here a slight closer approach compared to the rest of the SUV, that's fully justified by this one. Mr. Lewis.
Yeah, I mean, your plans you provided, concept master plan, they're not part of the plan at the moment, they're provided as part of the residence.
Yes.
But would I be right in reading your plan that you're showing the indicative area of housing that may fall within the air quality management area? Because she looking at the setback distances through the rest of the SUV, I thought that actually is beyond the air quality management area zone, whereas I'm just wondering whether you're showing housing in the indicative location that's within it, just really a point of clarification, really.
Certainly not aware that there's any encroachment into the AQMA on this section of the motorway. Again, there needs to be air quality modelling at the planning application stage. There hasn't been air quality modelling yet. There has been noise modelling, not yet air quality modelling. We've taken the view that because the buffer needed for air quality reasons is narrower than the buffer needed for noise reasons, as long as we undertake noise modelling at this stage, that should be sufficient for allocation purposes with air quality modelling to follow the planning application stage.
From my point of view, we just want to be satisfied that the plan addresses air quality too. Okay, but that's a useful clarification at this stage. Thank you.
So if it helps, it's ACMA 1 as far as the council's air quality management areas are concerned. The DEFRA website identifies that as between 40 to 54 metres from the central reservation of the M1.
Yeah, we've got that.
Yeah.
Again, it was to do, the point of the question was to do with what effect that might have on the capacity of the site. So if there's a need to move the dwellings back from the edge of the site, what would that do to the capacity of discussion in terms of the site specifics that relate to this, this area.
We are beyond that at this stage, just to make that clear. Before the resolution.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Again, this was a question we were asking this morning around certain sites, bearing in mind things like the air quality issue, the access issue through the SUE. Is this a site that perhaps needs a specific policy to seek to address these? Bearing in mind what we talked about this morning about asterisking certain policies to highlight that there are perhaps air quality issues in this case, or HRA issues in other cases, but not this one.
Yeah, it is definitely something that we will seek to review.
It'd be useful to try and wrap this one up with the other discussions that we've had to see if the air quality issues can be highlighted again to help the decision maker understand any proposal that comes in.
Just to say, we would be averse to a site-specific policy. We need to work with council officers to get it right. Well, there's certainly a huge amount of work done on obviously the SUE, given that it's outline permission, the boot master plans, so there's a lot of context behind this. But yes, if it's felt very good to have a site-specific policy, then
We understand. Obviously, you weren't party to the discussion this morning, but we were discussing on other sites whether the site-specific policies need to be extended to cover other sites, or whether by strengthening such things as the policy on the HRA in one site and policies on air quality management, the ones that have been referred to, whether they can be expanded. So, general development management policies could help to deal with these issues.
yes.
And the council, as says, will be looking at this. Thank you for that. Just following that discussion, then it would be reasonable to just have something from the council and probably Mr. Winskill about what is the realistic capacities and what is set out in the plan.
There is a statement of common ground that we have signed with the developer, and that is exam 23. We did do our own capacity analysis as well, and if we were to look at that, it would be in the region of 376 dwellings. This is 361. It's not a huge difference, but that for the site, because it is over 10 hectares, we assume 50% developable area. So we think this is realistic.
Thank you. So our appendix street plan, the concept master plan, just to hold it up just for one's benefits, see that. So this is based on quite a bit of work in terms of looking at site capacity. So we're not yet at planning application stage, but at application stage, looking at the hedgerows that would need to be preserved, looking at areas of flood risk that would also need to be respected, drainage basins that would need to be respected too, sufficient areas for drainage, sufficient standoffs also for not only the M1 but also the M1 to the west. And as you can see from that plan, the net developable area, 8.39 hectares. So that would deliver, on the plan, deliver a density of 40 dwellings per hectare, 336 units, so slightly less than what the proposed number is. But it wouldn't take much to increase the capacity to 361. It would only involve 43 dwellings per hectare as an average net density of the site as a whole, which is not excessive, which would be a fairly modest increase in overall terms. So we'd certainly be comfortable with the proposed allocation as 361 on the basis that 43 hectare is a reasonable net average density. The particularly taking into account the likely form of housing closest to the motorway, which could involve a degree of barrier blocking housing, potentially slightly denser, not necessarily flat, but certainly townhouses, potentially linked housing, potentially terraced houses to a degree. So the potential of slightly denser housing adjacent to the motorway there, and conceivably adjacent to the railway line as well. So 361 is, we feel, is reasonable, it's robust, it relates well to the SUV, to the density of the SUV. We'd be comfortable with that. 375, I think we said, 376, and again, that's not excessive as a density, so we wouldn't be uncomfortable with that. So 361 is certainly on the right route.
Question 96 is the one about sustainable transport. It would be useful just to understand that in terms of where the evidence is that the opportunities to promote sustainable transport modes can be taken up.
At this point, can I refer you to my colleague Chris Ragg, please?
Thank you, sir. Yes, I mean, I think in terms of the access to the site, Mr. Whitskill has demonstrated the plan is just shown how that can be achieved through the adjacent sustainable urban extension. So that provides both the walking and cycling access and the public transport access to be achieved through that. In terms of the impact of the development on the network in capacity terms, the traffic modelling and appraisal which we undertook showed that there were no significant issues within the vicinity of this development, and which leads to the fact there's no reason to believe that it can't be achieved beyond the sort of minor modifications you normally get within a transport assessment as mitigation impacts. And as has been said in the commentary LLP and Logan's home statement, there are currently proposed modifications to many of the junctions in that area as part of the SUE, and that will actually help to be providing extra capacity, which is likely to minimise the effect of anything more that would be needed.
Thank you. Mr. Winston.
Thank you, sir. In terms of your question related to sustainable transport, the site is very well located in respect of location, specifically the access to a wide range of facilities, whether that be employment, education, retail or community facilities. The site adjacent, Northamptonshire South Sustainable Urban Extension, has also been previously recognised at a local plan stage as a sustainable location for development. Indeed, through the granting of the Outline Planning Commission, again it's recognised as a sustainable location for development. In the context of this development, it echoes sort of the conclusions of the previous allocation for the site adjacent, and also in terms of sustainable transport, there's a wide range of footway cycleway links within the vicinity of the site. There's a public transport service proposed as part of the Northampton South Zoo, which is proposal could build upon, and also a viability of the long-term viability of, and also as we move into a future of new opportunities in terms of technology, the location of this site adjacent existing facilities provides those opportunities to build into those future technologies such as autonomous deliveries.
Thank you. I'm comfortable with the answer and moving on. The two questions we've been asking is standard, which were, are there any other factors that might affect this delivery that we have already discussed?
There are no other factors.
And in terms of main modifications, are there any being proposed for this policy area?
Yes, modifications 5 and 30 seek to combine the 3 sites.
We talked about that. Yes. Thank you very much. At this stage, have you got interest in another site?
No, so if it's okay with you, we'll set the way because that's...
Yeah, thank you. Saves you sitting here all through the rest of the session. I'll have a brief adjournment for 5 minutes to allow Mr. Winston to leave.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Safe trip home. Thank you.
No, I'm not sure. 40 to 50.
For 5 minutes?
Yes, sir, yes, in time.
Thank you. Right, we'll resume. We've got to University of Northampton Avenue campus, LA 1014. First question there we've got, what is the planning status of the site? And obviously we've got that in the table, but it might be worth just briefly telling us about that.
Okay, I'll go from the earlier ones. There is a hybrid application for 170 new dwellings, including an outline application for the demolition and conversion of existing university buildings, and the erection of new buildings to provide residential accommodation of up to 112 units. The full application is for the part demolition, conversion and extension of the Madewell building to provide 58 new dwellings. Would it help if I give you the reference numbers?
It would, and I'm sure they're covered by
Yeah.
the table you gave us last night.
Yeah,
But,
for the hybrid,
just help, yeah.
for the hybrid permission, that's N 2016 stroke 0810. The next one is WNN stroke 2021 stroke 0582, and this is in progress. And this is essentially, the application is for a non-material amendment to the planning application I've just referred to. And the changes relate to the residential accommodation that is to be developed. In the original application it's 112, it's now amended to 104. And as for the Madewell building, it was originally 58. It is now an application for 66. The next one is WNN stroke 2021 stroke 0760, and this is for a prior approval for the demolition of the Innovation Centre, the Isham Studios building, the Student Union's building, Walgrave building and the Hayford building. And the final one, which is also in progress, is WNN stroke 2021 /0927, and it is a reserved matters application pursuant to the outline planning permission I've already discussed earlier in relation to the 104 dwellings. This now comprises 55 new build 2- and 3-story houses and 48 family-sized flats.
And again, bear in mind you're getting the planning applications in. In terms of question 100, are there any factors that would mean that this wouldn't be delivered that are coming out?
No.
Okay, I've got no more points on that. So there's no. Moving on then to Hillwise Farm, Hunbury Hill, LA 1100. This one again appears to be one that has a relationship to a local wildlife site.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to explore there around is that the justification for the 50%, for the allocation of 50% of the site for housing?
The whole site was actually promoted by Network Rail.
Yeah.
However, although we're allocating the whole site as a development site, we think that only half of the site is suitable for housing development for two reasons. As you quite rightly say, part of the western half of the site is a local wildlife site. And secondly, there is also a need to cater for the rail requirements in relation to a track, an embankment, and a protection zone. It was concluded that it would be preferable to allocate the whole site as a development site, but only require half of it to be developed for housing allocation. It will be up to the site promoter to determine where the 50% would be, because they need to take into account their own legal requirements.
Again, in terms of this one, bearing in mind the two things that you mentioned, that's the relationship to the local wildlife site and the railway requirement, is this another one where a site-specific policy might help its deliverability?
It is. We can look into this. Yes.
I'm just wondering whether this would be a site, given that the area in relation to the operational railway will be known by the body that is responsible for the operational railway, that belong to the site, and the local wildlife site is known. Would it be helpful and to make the plan effective to actually include a development principles diagram, as per,
Yes.
for example, figure 22 site, just to guide the parameters? It may be that further information is needed from Network Rail in terms of the parameters of the operational railway, but that's things they will know in relation to the cutting the tunnel and everything else.
Yeah. Yeah, it is certainly something that we will consider. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on that? I have no further questions on that. It's the local wildlife site. Why was it 50%? And that's good. Moving to the next one, which is Watering Lane, Coventry, LA 1104. I think we had similar questions here around air quality that we had to the combined site that we discussed earlier. So again, are there any implications for the deliverability or the capacity of the site, which are brought about due to its relationship to the M1.
Just to reinforce what Simon said earlier about the site being 40 to 54 metres from the central reservation of the M1, which is ACMA 1. Also to just reiterate the fact that the Northampton South SUE, which is located to the west of the site, was granted permission on appeal, and it was mentioned that issues relating to air quality and noise can be addressed through design and landscape. We also have policies 2 on placemaking, policy 3 on design, and policy 4 on amenity and layout, which will help with the issue, as well as policy BN9 of the core strategy.
Just then to confirm, in terms of applying those policies and the design and layout issues, would that have any effect on the capacity of the site? As far as you're aware at this stage?
We do not think that that would affect the capacity of the site. We have got a statement of common ground that's been signed, and that is exam 24.
Thank you. I have no more questions about Mr. Lewis. Have you got any questions?
No, just other than we discussed how the air quality requirements could be affected through the plan, and that's something that you'll take away.
Again, that will be another site that look at as to whether it could be covered by either strengthening existing policies or perhaps a site specific, but I think a site specific is probably less important in the case of that one, because the issues don't seem to be as complicated as some of the others. Moving on to the next one, which is the former Abington Mill Farm, land off Rushmere Road. I think we touched on this yesterday with the environment agency. So I might be covering some of the ground we did yesterday, but I'll do it just for the sake of completeness. So the first one is about what evidence is the council using to show that the site can be accessed, the site access can be made safe during a significant flood event.
We have a statement of common ground signed with the landowner, and that is exam 28, and they are committed to delivering a safe access onto the site from Rushmere Road. Communication with the Environment Agency also confirmed that they do not see any issues with providing safe access from Rushmere Road.
Thank you. In terms of the access, that, as I understand it, goes over land that's in the council's ownership, is that?
It goes over land in the council's ownership, that is correct.
Could you, I think again we talked yesterday about the council being in discussion with the landowners over the purchase of the land.
Yes.
Again, if you could help us in terms of what stage those discussions have reached. And it's difficult to say this at this time, I know, but is it likely they'll reach a favourable conclusion? What's the likelihood and what direction they're going in?
It is difficult, obviously, for me to commit the council to a yes or a no. But the discussions started in March last year, but obviously was delayed as a result of COVID. It started at around the same time when the pre-application was submitted. The consultant in the hearing statement did say that they are resuming talks with the authority on this.
They haven't started yet,
Oh, they have started, and it's been ongoing, but there's a couple of things that have delayed it. It's COVID, as well as the merging of the three authorities into one. So there were other pressing matters that the council had to deal with at that time. So, but it is ongoing.
I think from our perspective, in terms of soundness, we would be interested in evidence that would demonstrate a reasonable prospect that the site can be accessed from Rushmere Road. It doesn't appear to be an alternative. So if we have some evidence or provided evidence of there being a reasonable alternative, if the site doesn't come forward because that's not possible, and if we were to agree the site should be allocated, if it doesn't come forward, it's something the council could reconsider in a future review of the plan and remove it from the plan if it's not actually feasible. So we would fall into the developable category rather than deliverable in that case. But I think we would need some comfort that it is feasible.
Yeah.
Land ownership matters are something that other people need to be concerned about. There's a technical feasibility of at this stage. And if we were to agree that, I think then it would be a case of the council having to look at the implications of the amended site or with those provisions in terms of HRA and SA, should that be necessary. Because there may be a need to alter the allocation boundary in order to conclude that. Or a criteria-based policy that sets out access shall be from Rushmere Road only.
Okay. The site promoter did say that they were investigating potential access from Tanfield Road as well.
Okay. We would be interested to have input from Council's local highways perspective as to whether a safe and suitable access could be provided. And of course, with the forms of alternative access, there's the issue of the exceptions test that needs to be considered. Because if it's through land that is subject to flooding and isn't defended, that's an exceptions test fails, isn't it? Whereas the exceptions test pass would appear to be Rushmere Road. Okay, so it may not be one that you can answer today.
No.
That would be one to take away.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that.
Thank you. The other question I had was around the designation of the land which the access would pass, and as I understand it, that is part of the green corridor. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, this answers question 106 really. It is included in the local level green infrastructure network, which means that any development on the site will need to contribute to the projects that will sustain and enhance that local green infrastructure network.
And how would this proposal then contribute to sustaining that local green infrastructure network?
I can also if that helps. all of the allocations would have to adhere by the rest of the policies within the plan, and policy 27 deals with green infrastructure and requirements from development to contribute to green infrastructure projects within Northampton as set out in the green infrastructure plan. I mean, that site we've just checked, it's natural and semi-natural green space.
Yeah.
Surrounding that site, but yes, sites major. We're proposing major residential development applications will need to adhere to policy 27 in terms of providing green infrastructure.
So therefore, would it be looking to provide green infrastructure within the site, or would you be looking for a contribution towards the provision of green infrastructure elsewhere, or how would that be done?
It could be either or, so you could be having green infrastructure within the site, or there are projects that can be contributed to.
Thanks. Just the reason.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be helpful if you could explain how the potential site could be consistent with what is in the green infrastructure plan that identifies that as an area of open space. And just to give us some comfort that it can be developed and still meet the needs of the green infrastructure plan.
If we look at the hearing statement that was done by the site promoter, they did confirm that future residents will be given full access to the Northampton Watchlands to the south, which is a significant network of water bodies and recreational footpaths, which links to the wider green infrastructure network. They have mentioned that they will provide financial contributions towards the GI network for its management as well as its enhancement.
Yeah, I understand what the promoter is saying. What is the council actually wanting to happen in relation to its green infrastructure plan? It's your plan and it's your green infrastructure plan. How should the site come forward in order to meet the needs set out in the green infrastructure plan, if that's what the council still should?
Can we...
I mean, it's your plan, not the promoter's plan at the end of the day, and so what are the council's requirements for the site? I think it's what we're...
Unless my colleagues can look at this quickly, otherwise what we can do is we can go back and have a look at the mapping and the document, because the document actually splits the local green infrastructure network into 9 components, and each of those components will have a series of projects which the developer can contribute to. But in order to do that, we need to go back and have a look at the green infrastructure plan. So if it would help, we will do that and get back to you on the actual projects that the document recommends for this area. Yeah?
I think the point is that at the present time it's part of the green infrastructure. And I suppose what we're after is what does this contribute to the green infrastructure in the town? And if it does contribute to the green infrastructure in the town, at what level, I'm sure it does, how does the proposal, both in terms of its access and the development, compromise that contribution?
Okay.
So what are you losing? It's about quantifying what are you losing through this, and then is that loss acceptable? We're not sure at the moment. If it is acceptable, then what's needed in compensation to bring forward? And that could be a contribution from the development.
Okay. We can go back and have a look. I mean, the Abington Mill area is within a component, within component F, which is known as the Washlands and the Eastern Nen. And as I've already said, within this component, there are a series of projects that have been identified which will assist in protecting, enhancing, and increasing the enjoyment of the area within that component. And this is particularly relevant to the Upper Nen Valley gravel pits SPA, so we can delve a little bit more into the details of those projects and as you say, what impact it would be if we were to continue with the allocation of the site.
We're interested in understanding the consistency between different documents in the evidence base. We have a site that's proposed to be allocated and a site that in another evidence-based document appears to be a component within the Green Infrastructure Plan, which appears to have value in its own right as green infrastructure. So it's not so much a case of what can the development of the site deliver. We're interested in knowing what is its present value as identified in the council's evidence base.
Yeah.
And then we need to think about what the proposed development would do in terms of that value and how the policy may need to, if we decide that the allocation is sound, to go forward on that basis.
Yeah.
Yes.
I agree.
We'll look at the details of that and come back.
So yeah, we'll come back on that.
Yeah.
Principally the green infrastructure corridors are sourced from BN1, I think, of the Joint Core Strategy, which is dealing with connections as opposed to the protection of green space for its own sake. So we'll come back to you and just explain how that all knits together.
I think in the context of the Green Infrastructure Plan that moves on from the policy basis, doesn't it?
Yes, indeed, yeah.
Okay, we have certainly I've got no more points or questions on this LAA 1107. So we can move on to the next one, unless you've got any further points, Mr. Luke. To St John's Railway Embankment LAA 1134. This appears to be an area of land that we haven't seen this one yet, by the way. So it appears to be an area of land which has got some trees on it. I understand what the statements have said in terms of the quality of the trees, but the question I have here is, are any of the trees that will be affected by the development, I know they're not protected at the present time, but any of them worthy of protection, or what is the, I suppose it comes down to question 7, would the allocation be effective in protecting biodiversity of trees?
What would be relevant here is that any development that is proposed on the site will need to comply with policy 29 of the local plan, and that policy is being recommended for modification, and that's modification 14.
This is splitting policies.
Yeah, the splitting policies, and also policy BN2, the Joint Core Strategy. We accept that some of the trees, if not all the trees, may need to go.
So in accepting that, then you've done an assessment of the trees in terms of their current quality and contribution to.
We did not do that, no.
That's something in the planning application.
That will be a planning application stage, but as you have noted, that none of the trees are subject to tree preservation orders, but also the site is located within, adjacent to Beckett's Park, which is a registered park and garden.
Significance of it being located to Beckett's Park is what?
It's the fact that even if the existing trees cannot be protected, not all of them, we have policy 29 that will require the developer to create a net gain in biodiversity. And it may be that the site could capitalise on the benefits that can be offered by Beckett's Park next door.
Lewis?
Just really to ask if you've had any consideration how the site, we haven't been to look at it yet, but if it is a site that is wooded, for want of a better description, how a net gain biodiversity could be achieved. Reading representations, it appears to be fairly good biodiversity there at the moment. Again, we've been to look at it. I've taken ecological survey, but has the council given any thought to that, how it could be achieved, or how the mechanism will be secured, ultimately, through a legal agreement or whatever, to secure off-site improvements?
It is not something that we have looked at in detail, but it is something that we can go and consider.
Would that be covered through policy 29?
It will be covered by policy 29, yeah.
Okay, I have no more. Apart from, in terms of this site, there are no, apart from the issue of the trees, are there any other factors which would mean that the site is not deliverable or developable as per the definitions in the framework?
No.
And we can come on to land north of Milton Ham, LAA 1140. And again, is this another one that's just near the M1?
Yeah.
And so therefore, I suppose this is the question 109, which what's the justification for the indicative capacity of 224 dwellings, and does the proximity to the M1 affect that capacity?
Yeah, it's not as close to the M1 as the other sites were that we've discussed earlier.
So it will be more than 40 to 50
It's
metres
more
from
than
the
40,
centre,
50
whereas
metres, yes, definitely. The indicative capacity was calculated using the standard land availability assessment methodology.
That's the 50%.
That's the 50, yeah. No, sorry, it's because the site is below 10 hectares, it's 80% of the gross developable area. And that is at 40 dwellings per hectare.
Mr. Lewis, did you have a question on this one?
No, nothing this one.
And again, in terms of this one, there's no other factors that would mean the site would not be developable in terms of the framework.
We have made notes of the fact that there are flooding issues and potentially pipes located across the northeast boundary. But since the land availability assessment is assessed at 80% of the site, we consider these constraints to have been accounted for. And there are no other factors that would mean that the site is not deliverable or developable. There is also a signed statement of common ground, and that is exam 19.
Okay, thank you for that. So there's any more points on that one?
Not that I know, but I have another mystery question.
I've never let you ask it then.
Just something that's occurred to me as we've been going through the allocation, that it relates to the provision of indicative dwelling capacities. Now that's what policy 13 sets out, but some of the site-specific policies have different wording. They say things like policy 39 at least, policy 41 up to, policy 43 at least, and policy 44 in the region of. So in terms of effectiveness and consistency, and thinking about how the council may wish to deal with this with development management process at some point in the future, I think it's something that needs to be thought about in terms to provide clarity to make the plan effective as either as a main modification or a series of main modifications within changes to policies. We've heard the evidence that's been given as to the anticipated capacities on certain sites. You know, if there are sites where the council thinks that up to 800 is right and justified, maybe you can confirm, which is the Great Northern site, please confirm that to us. But that is inconsistent with the indicative capacity in a way, because it may be development aspirations of more or less, and it is a matter that generally is dealt with through the development management process, where all constraints, etc. are considered. So the starting point of indicative dwelling capacities is a normal approach, and I think that's fine, but there is then some variation elsewhere in the plan. And we haven't had it in this examination, but the last few I've done, there's been quite a discussion as to what the capacity should be on sites, with site promoters trying to get a greater capacity. And that issue was dealt with by saying indicative, that's leaving it to the development management system. I think that it would be effective to actually set out in a brief paragraph whether the council thinks that these indicative capacities are given as indicative capacities based upon the work you've done for assessment for the local plan, and if this is what you intend, to go on to say the actual capacities of the site will be determined through the development management process, taking into account constraints and the application of policies in this plan and the joint board strategy. Then it removes that sort of element of doubt, because I'm thinking ahead to a future situation where there could be some discussion and an appeal, say, one of our colleagues as to exactly is it indicative, what policy 41 says up to, and they're proposing 815 or whatever. So it's just really providing that clarity. What does the council mean? I think I read your approach as being, you've done this work for the local plan, these are what you think the sites are, you've assessed this on the basis of the local plan, the highways work is based on these indicative capacities. Yeah. That's my understanding of what you've done, and that's my understanding of how you explained it to us. Yeah. But it's just to be clear that there's another process beyond this, which is the development management stage, should the plan be found sound, etc., where the figures may be higher, maybe lower. It might be that the dwelling mix that comes forward might dictate a lower number of dwellings at that point in time. I'm just thinking ahead, it may save some heartbreak later on.
Okay, okay, we can do that.
Thank you.
So just by way of clarification, would that be in terms of supporting text, or would it be in the policy?
Well, I think there are two aspects. So it's providing some supporting text or explaining the text, or however you wish to describe it, in relation to policy 13. Okay, so it will be an insertion, it will be a name modification, but it will be an insertion of further explanation as to how policy 13 has been constructed and would work. And any changes to the wording through the specific policies would be through name modification. Yeah. Okay, so it's really to provide consistency. So there's no harm, I suppose, in different policies are written by different people to say at least or whatever. You can use different phrasing if it means the same. Not ideal, but you can do. But if it then causes doubt and inconsistency with what it says in policy 13, there's that sort of question then, isn't there?
Yeah. So we'll give some thought to that. There may be a need for some inconsistency of treatment, because some will be at least, because the council wants to give an indication, for example, Ransom Road, that they want to achieve more if they can. But that, I think, will have to be reflected in policy 13, but with an additional text of paragraph as well.
Just to make that clear, because I'm just sort of thinking ahead a couple of years with if there is an adopted plan and then there's some discussion in front of one of my colleagues as to exactly what is meant. The plan at the moment, this is something I noticed, wouldn't be effective because you've got in some sites you've got two different versions of a number. What is a number? What does the council really want this plan to say?
Yeah, then we can tidy that up as well as part of the, I think, probably the general review of policy 13.
Yeah. And
how it then has an effect on the other policies.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we've now reached the end of that discussion on the allocations and the end of this next sessions.
Are you in a position to email them to very officer? Do you have an up-to-date list?
I have one that's hot off the press, sir. Yes, so
Okay.
I can do that.
If we do that, well, when you're happy to send it, then maybe we take a brief adjournment or comfort break and whatever, and you can email it to Mr. Kemp. He can email it to us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Give us time to have a look at it, and then we can check it against our notes.
Yeah.
So should we resume?
20 minutes.
20 minutes probably is safer, and knowing the council's laptops and how they perform when under pressure, I think 20 minutes is the safest.
Thank you. We'll adjourn then until round about 3:30.
Yeah, I'd save it as a.
Sorry.
I think you're right. Yes, I have. Yeah. So
So I'll just say that.
yes, it offers the option of down.